if we want to replace industrial mass production, and I say this often, with production by the masses, and some people don't like when I say that because it oversimplifies many things, but for me it's an image.
Yeah, and a vision.
And a vision. When you see that in action, when you see that happening somewhere, and you see the result on the social fabric in the community, you see the local economy that's created that way, like we see it in Frelighsburg in the area. You live there, you know that.
Of course.
It's amazing. So for me, that's the end game.
When you look back to 20 years ago when you started in farming, and you think about the role that small farms had in the world of agriculture and our general world at large, how do you feel about how it's going now?
I feel pretty positive, honestly. I feel that in my community, like when we started Modelen and I here in 2003, there was one organic farm in the area doing farmers market and doing CSA shares. Now there's about 30. Not just vegetable farms, but there's a lot of organic farms. We have Wednesday night, farmer night in Frelighsburg,
of course,
where there's all the farmers come together. There's more farmers market. It's not all roses. There's still some issues, but I just feel that there's been an evolution in the offering. There's more offer. And I think that's key, because if we want to replace industrial mass production, and I say this often, with production by the masses, and some people don't like when I say that because it oversimplifies many things, but for me it's an image.
Yeah, and a vision.
And a vision. When you see that in action, when you see that happening somewhere, and you see the result on the social fabric in the community, you see the local economy that's created that way, like we see it in Frelighsburg in the area. You live there, you know that.
Of course.
It's amazing. So for me, that's the end game. The end game is to have communities that are built around local farms, local restaurant, local everything. And that's competing against big ag that is in the big superstores that for me are very reverse to where we want to go. Like for me, that's like the it's not just because of how I see the ecological impacts of superstores and Amazons of this world. It's because it's not interesting in a social context. Like it's food. It's like it's a commodity. And I've always repeated this for so many years, and I took this from Elliot Coleman, and I asked Elliot if I could use this, because I think it's really appropriate. Is like, I think the future of farming is food grown with care by people who care. Like the intention goes a long way. And long answer to your short question, I think the question of what the future of farming is not the right question, because that question is what's the word, it's rigged.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
It's rigged because obviously technology and just like nanotechnology and just like robotics and like investing, and that's the future of farming, because the people asking these questions, that's the answer that they want. Like, what do we want? How do we want to be fed? How do we want to have the food that we eat produced? That's the question. And I think we want human scale farming.
Yeah.
I think that's what we want. And that's what I want. That's what I want for my life. That's what I want for my kids' life. That's what I want for my community. That's why I have a restaurant. Local food grown with care by people who care. And we want to have people that have their hands in the soil. Not just machines and robots. We don't want an industrialized system. We want a decentralized system that is creating local economy. And, I think there's going to be a big fight that's already in process for the last 50 years against just like the industrialization of, and it's not going to be industrialization, it's going to be the techno, I don't know the word for that, like the techno everything of farming.
Yeah, the technolization.
Yeah, the technolization of farming.
It's not a word, I think.
But I think that's what we're going to be up against.
I want to take two ideas that you put out there and bring them together, and because like it's a huge question, just how do we replace large production with small production by the masses? That's obviously a guiding light, but it's so broad that I think the only way to talk about it is just to get into certain details. So you mentioned superstores, and I don't remember the other thing actually right now, but my question is, if we're going to get to that point, the role of grocery store, I think, needs to change. It needs to evolve, because if you go to any grocery store in pretty much any town, it's loaded with people. Those people are potentially not going to farmers markets. This is where they're going to get their food. So how do you see the future of the grocery store and how it relates to farmers markets, CSAs? Like, how are some of those customers going to transition? What role will the grocery store play? Like, can you talk on that at all?
Yeah, there's two big topics. There's access to land and how to dismantle the current centralized food system, in my opinion, which both are kind of involves quite like a little bit of a revolution.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a big believer in the why of things, and I think a lot of the younger people that are starting in their career, they're going to work for businesses and enterprises that have a clear why on why they're doing what they're doing. And just making money is not going to cut it. It needs to be, we're having a positive impact on the local economy. We're contributing to something that for the greater good. Food chains. If they're sitting here and you ask the CEO of a food chain, what's his end game? The bottom line for the shareholders. That's it.
Yeah.
I think that why is too weak and too poor to keep on staying relevant where we're going. So I can, my first answer is getting people out of the supermarkets. And my buzzword is always, we need less supermarkets and more supermarket gardeners. I like that. But I think you'll see a shift where you have some local independent food stores that have a better why, that are attracting people that have more consciousness about these issues. And that needs to happen.
And arguably that is happening at a certain rate already. It might not be enough to be where we want to be, but for sure 20 years ago, there was way less people that were going to these alternative places for their food, or even aware that it was an option, right?
It's really busy.
Yeah. Well, that's farming.
Do you like it like that?
Yeah,
busy?
that's fine.
All right.
I mean, whatever.
Yeah, I think that whole, I'm Chris. I'm optimist and positive, but I also see what's going on.
Yeah.
So we had local independent food co-ops that were kind of busting and kicking and thriving because they were different. They were offering local foods. They had the organic produce in them, and then Whole Foods came along and just grabbed it.
Yeah.
Just made it bigger, better, more appealing, more marketable, just like sophisticated, more resources, and then it grabbed the market. And same thing happened with organic. Like, there was local small farms everywhere in North America pushing local produce at the farmer's market. Organic was, you want to be different, you want to be more in tune with nature, you want to be more in tune with the solution, buy organic. And now Big Ag just bought the label, the organic certification labeling. So, I think even though I'm super positive and I'm not overly politicized, we're always fighting against corporation that want to steal our markets. And we need to be thinking like that. We want to steal their markets. We want to grab people out of the supermarkets and bring them into the local food hub. We want to counter, university extension agents that are heavily funded by big ag.
Like in the U.S. especially.
Like in the U.S., we want to fight back and have our own resources. We want to fight politicians on these things. And like, there needs to be a certain level of activism still. And I think it's just inevitable.
Yeah, and every successful grassroots movement faces that same problem of big business wanting to use it, put it to use for their own ends.
Yeah.
And it's the grassroots. It's up to them, to us, to anyone in the small scale farming world, to be the resistance to that, I guess.
Yeah, like, last time we were together, I had this t-shirt, resistance is fertile.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. And like, there's an opportunity also, because big ag has control of the food distribution. So it's just an opportunity to reclaim it.
Yeah.
So more farms, local farms, better engineering of, local food hubs, how they're organized, local food shops, local coffee shops, everything that's not Starbucks, anything that's not Whole Foods, anything that's not, it's like, this is what's interesting. There's taste, there's flavor, there's colors, there's people, there's culture. This is the crossroad between having something that is blended and homogeneized. What's the word for that?
Homogenized?
Homogenized and lame and boring.
Yeah.
And having a vibrant culture like you'll have in Europe or in France or here in Philipsburg, where there's a farm to table and that's where you want to be. Independent theater, independent everything.
Yeah. Speaking on that, the relation of big ag, the idea that big ag controls the food supply in a lot of ways, or the distribution, and that we have an opportunity to take parts of that. It's easy for one to imagine how that can be done with veggies, and kind of how it's already an option. But I'm curious about what you think about those other things that we all like to eat, the breads, the pastas, the grain, the oil, all these things that I think make up a large part of many people's diets. Where does small-scale farming need to fit into that? What do you think?
That's such a great question. And today, like, I see this happening, and it's gonna be the next 30 years. You'll have local food processing plants, micro plants.
Yeah.
Like, they'll have all the equipment of an industrialized plant, but it's going to be small, micro, and for local markets.
Like microbreweries, I guess.
Microbreweries. It's a great example. Like 30 years ago, there was perhaps like 7 beers in the whole US market that were distributed everywhere.
Yeah.
Now there's tens of thousands that are everywhere popping up. It's creating a local economy. That's we're going to see that with wine. Like, wine today is controlled by a lot of people that have a lot of money, that have estates. Like, you'll see young people getting into wine, making natural wine, doing a lot less bottles, but selling them directly, being more present, a better product, and using the technology of more industrial things, but on a local level. You'll see that with grains, small grains. Like, that's the old mill that we used to, what's the word for? We used to mill, the grain from all the farmers in the area, and produce, locally produce all the wheat that we would eat, all the different cereals. Like, it's going to come back to that, because the wheat today is making people sick. Like, that's, like, everyone's that's stop eating wheat, guaranteed you'll feel much better. So that's not normal, because wheat is it's a super food.
Yeah.
But it's so poorly, the genetics of the wheats is so poor now, the seeds, that we need to kind of just propose an alternative that is much more superior, and then you'll have local mills, and you have all the equipment to make your flour, and then you'll have the label, the coolness factor of it. You'll sell online, you'll sell to local, and that's going to happen in everything.
Yeah, and it is already happening.
It's happening.
Like, I know of a farm in New Jersey where I used to live that was doing small scale grains, and the NOFA of New Jersey was really involved in this, and they had people from like Amish country coming to talk about how they were doing grains and do showcases on, I think it was einkorn is one of the varieties. It's like a heirloom variety of, I think, wheat. I hope I'm right. And like there was a sense that is coming, and it's only going to come more and more because it's already proliferated with veggies. But it's
and microbreweries. You said it. Like, microbreweries is a great example. Like, I wish we could have the numbers of how 30 years prior and now the impact of microbreweries in the local economies throughout the US and North America. It's, here in Dunham, like, it's the number one employer.
Yeah.
It's huge. And, it's the Dunham Brewery is a microbrewery. It's not.
Yeah, it's all done right there.
So, and the reason why I'm so excited about that is that if you distill all the moving parts in an argument about what could replace mass production, it's not about regenerative farming, organic farming. It's not a label, because the label will always be co-opted. It's about local. It's about presence, human. It's about connections. And that, my friend, cannot be duplicated on a large scale, except if it's multiplied. And that's the real revolution. And then no one's talking about that. No one is the spokesman of that idea. And there needs to be more people saying this is what should happen. Because there's a lot of resources right now that are going in regenerative farming for climate change. A lot of resources.
Yep.
And that money could be going to the local food shed.
Yeah, and anyone in this space, they know it because we experience it. The human-to-human connection is, without a doubt, the most powerful part of it all.
Yeah. And we've all seen it. Like, you had that local brewery that went big, sold out, and they're not interesting anymore. They're not your local brewery anymore.
Yeah.
And and that's why just like this small scale farming is changing the world. That's why I'm saying this, because it's the fact that it's small that it's changing the world. It's not small scale organic, small scale regenerative, small scale and highly efficient farms with the good technology, low tech, 4-season, access to local markets, food distribution with local farm-to-table restaurants, local food co-ops. Like, eating is a big economy. Like, there's a lot of people to feed.
We all need to.
So that's why I see that the revolution, that's where it's heading.
Let's talk about obstacles in the way of small farms succeeding in small farms and multiplying. I'm gonna kind of rapid fire at you different obstacles.
Sure.
Give a brief-ish answer on each one. Land access.
That's a tough one. Land access. I don't want to say land reform, because I studied that at university and we were looking at people in South America. It wasn't a happy ending. I think there needs to be better design of how land is used.
Yeah, from like a government level, or even, I guess, just cultural, societal. It's a hard question, isn't it?
It's a hard question. I don't have the answer to that. What's the name of the guy that Buckminster Fuller?
I'm not sure if I know.
Yeah, Buckminster Fuller in the 1940s made designs, community designs of what it would like if small farms were making up the countryside. People should look that up. Just that image of him, this image of what a province could look like. It's amazing. And
like,
that's how France was 100 years ago.
And was it like each community, like if you imagine a suburb, you could almost imagine what if 50% of the backyards were all growing food and everyone in that suburb ate that. Like that's sort of a pretty vision of what it could be, but
it's not a pretty vision, because otherwise, if there's no food anymore, because big ag is having a hard time with water shortage, it's having a hard time with climate change, there's going to be massive migration of populations because of the rise of water. There's going to be a lot of disruption in the next 20 years. Like there's a big possibility that people will start growing their own food because either they won't have access to it, or it's going to be too expensive. Ooh. So that's possible.
That's my next one. The price of produce. The fact that people aren't able to sell their produce for enough. Like they're not able to hit their margin. Where do you see that kind of issue getting improved upon?
Yeah, as a farmer, like I want to have better prices. That's my end game. As a consumer, that's kind of because if it's so expensive that you can't buy it because it's local and it's organic and it's it's healthy, nutrient dense, whatever. Yeah, that's another hard one.
Do you think we as a society don't value food enough? Is there an argument to be made? Because that's what some people say.
Yeah, I think when you look at, let's say, a football city and you look at the stadiums, how many people go to watch a football game? The price of a football game in the NFL, let's say, it's just like, it's terrible. It's like, that's the food cost of a month. So I don't know. Like, I think there's this issue of not people valuing the quality of finer foods enough. Usually the people that value finer foods more, they probably have more education, they're a bit more aware of these things, they're perhaps more sophisticated in their own taste, and so it attracts this clientele. But there's a lot of education that goes into all of that.
Yeah, and it's not quite a saying, but an idea that there's two things that people refuse to spend more money on: energy and food. The two things that we actually need every single day. And perhaps that's why, because we just view them as commodities. They're not gadgets that we want in our lives. They're things that we literally need every day. So we just view it, that it has to be a certain price, and anything more is absurd.
Yeah, and I think on that topic, I know this is rapid fire, we need to go faster.
Yeah, that's okay.
Like, please stop putting the pressure on the farmer to produce at lower cost. Like, please stop it. Like, don't get pissed at a grower because he's selling things expensive, because he needs to make a living also. And, it's not his fault if there's no social safety nets, if there's no healthcare, if there's no public education, if there's no, these are all societal issues that the farmer can't bear that on his shoulder. Like, the burden of producing food at a low cost shouldn't be his game. He should be focusing on producing high quality, nutritional, valuable food for people to be healthy. That should be his game.
Yeah, and a final note on that point, in your interview that you did with Jeff Moyer from Rodale last year, I remember him saying that for farmers, it's not their fault that they decided to go conventional and do things cheaper. There was a farmer that said it was the consumer's fault. You told me what you wanted by buying these things. Yeah, you wanted cheap. And the more you bought it, I was like, I'm just going to give you what you want. And so there is this question of what role does the consumer play, and then does that mean there needs to be a revolution of education? I mean, I think we all agree there kind of does, but I guess like there's so many different people and ways of getting involved and making this happen other than just being a farmer. And like we need all of the players to come in to change things, because the consumer needs to change, the governments and our whole society and culture, how we think, that's all of it has to shift in order for small farms to grow and to be successful and to not just always be running into walls. Yeah. And one place where there needs to be a shift is like in universities right now.
Like, I'm not sure that too many students are looking at the right issues to tackle in their future. Like, the good food revolution, nourishing people, farming technologies that are not only that are based in ecology, human niches and human culture. Like, this is a real revolutionary subject. Like, and I sometimes I wonder, like, I hear strong debates and really strong focus on social issues that in my mind are not, they're important, but you know, there's others out there. And how we're being fed right now, like, man, if people knew more, it's pretty darn upsetting.
Yeah.
And there's so much room for growth of the alternative. And so, wow, just like, I just feel more energy should be put in these kind of subjects.
Absolutely. All right. The idea that young people that want to start in farming don't have money.
Yeah.
And so, how do we? What do you think could be done there to just make it more accessible? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that just putting money on it solves the issue. Like, there could be better, you know, I think there needs to be policies that say, you know, if you want to have young people in farming, which means old people can get out of farming, because that works together.
True.
We need to have policies that redesign and reshape land so that it's smaller, there's more diversity of usage on these pieces of land, and there needs to be some subsidies so that young people have the right equipment to start their farms and not start in a teepee like I did and just kind of buy everything without any money. So, and better education about how to farm, and just like, these are all things that could and can and are slowly getting done. So policy plays a big role. Who's involved in policy and why? Like, also there's also that. It's like, perhaps that we should reconnect with some of the folks that we know that are involved in policy, give them a little bit more of our support, just make them more aware of farming issues, bring them on farms, educate them with fine food.
Yeah.
Like, there's this bridge that needs to be. Yeah, and we should get rid of the bozos that are running the show up there. Like, it's ridiculous.
What about the idea of taking on debt? I think a lot of young farmers, especially the ones that are super inspired, I think a lot of them are very anti the idea of taking on debt and relying on banks, relying on. But I think you come from a bit more of a practical mindset of, like, well, you know, most businesses, if you don't have money, the only way you're going to get it off the ground is some sort of investment or loan or something.
Yeah.
So what do you think, what would you say to a young person that's super resistant to any idea of debt and things like that?
Yeah, I don't know how many more questions you have, but we could wrap it up with this, because it comes back to my main point, like the why. The why in business is really important. But once the why is well answered, business is a really strong catalyst for change. It's a superstructure of how to organize ideas, thoughts, energy, movement towards something. And so young people that want to start farms, they need to have better acumen of entrepreneurial skills, entrepreneurship, economics, how that works, running small businesses, how that works. And then once you study that, you understand that loans is just one of the tools to get what you need to go somewhere. Business plan, business cases, all of these tools in a toolbox of an entrepreneur are really important, like very important. So that's my message to them.
All right, moving on from these obstacles. Oh, actually, I wanted to ask this because I think a lot of young farmers are thinking about it. What do you think about value-added products and agritourism for farmers as a means of potentially making themselves more profitable?
Yeah, value-added products, agritourism, stacking on the enterprises with different things. I think that's great, because the end game for me is you have, let's say, 200, 300, 400 500 customers that you're having a direct relationship with. You're seeing them, you're connected to them, they're in your community. They come to your store, they come to your farm. These are the customers that will buy from you. So veggies, that was the reason why market gardening exists. It's like, why would I just sell you carrots? What I can sell you carrots, beans, lettuce, peas, everything you need. So my stand has everything. But add eggs, add flour, add cheese. That's what the farmer's market is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, that's great. Local shops. If you have now, e-commerce is great for that. You can set up an e-commerce business in 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then you have your customers, and then you can sell what you want to them. And just like get out of the mindset that this needs to scale and you need to build a big business. You don't. Just build a local business that pays for expenditures, pays for salaries, pays for you, provide a good service, and that's great. You're going to be a local celebrated, person.
Yeah. What are you seeing right now in the small scale farming world, maybe even right around you personally, that is making you feel really hopeful and excited and looking forward to the future? An example would be really nice if you have one.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples of, I think how chefs in recent years have switched it on eating locally and in season and showing people how to cook more simpler food. Like, I think we're done with going to the fancy restaurant and eating lobster from Argentina and, what's meduse?
Meduse?
Octopussy.
Oh, yeah, just
from the other world, or Thai shrimps. Like, that's so disgusting.
Yeah, we're realizing that it's not as cool as
it's not
we
cool.
thought it was.
Like, and I think that chefs and local restaurants that are aware, conscious, are a lot more, have a big role to play. They've had just like educating people on what's really cool is what's local and in season. That's what's really like the best. Like, so I'm really excited about that. That inspired me to open the restaurant here. I think like the BIPOC movement and getting messages to different communities, especially in the US.
Yeah.
I think that was huge, and I think that was necessary. And I'm not super well educated because I don't live in the US, and I'm not aware of all these pockets of how, different realities, but I think that was super positive to have a broader spectrum of visibility of who's doing what and cultural differences in farming in the US. I think we need to celebrate that. And I think regenerative, even though I have certain issues with how it's claimed and advertised right now, I think it's progress. And I want to believe it is. I'm an ambassador for the Rodale Institute, regenerative, organic. I think that needs to be, the buzzword needs to be regenerative, organic.
Yeah, put them together.
And put them together. I'm hopeful of that, and I'm hopeful that young people get into farming because they want to be outside, they want to make a difference. Climate change is going to impact tremendously how things are done with industrialized food production.
Yeah,
and water shortage, and it's going to be quite interesting in the next 30 years.
My final question. Imagine a close friend comes to you and says they want to start a farm, and they're young.
Yeah.
Maybe if it's someone like your son's age is like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
What would be your main advice you would give to them?
I would tell them to check out the masterclass, the online course that I teach.
No, but beyond that, what else? Give me some advice you would give.
Yeah, it's always the same. You need to be working on farms before. Like, find a farm that is healthy, productive, well-organized, well-structured. Work there for a few seasons, get what it is.
Yeah.
And then start your own. And then start small, make it happen, make connections, be part of a community. And then just like, That's a tricky question because that's kind of what I did. And I can see the result of what my wife and I, the evolution in our farming. We were very curious. We traveled to Cuba. We went to a lot of farms in the US and France and Europe. We saw things.
Yeah.
So I think like having a broad perspective on how to farm is important. And find a community where you'll fit in. And plant some grapes for natural wine.
Is there a red flag you would see in the beginning of someone's enterprise that you'd be like, oh, I think you should change this?
No.
Nothing that...
I don't think there's red flags. You know, we all know how farming is tough, but you know, honestly, I have friends in other sectors. It's tough everywhere.
It's tough everywhere, isn't it?
If you want to open a construction,
Good
you
luck.
know, it's tough. If you want to be like whatever you want to open as a business, man, you want to open a restaurant, good luck. That's tough.
Extremely.
And then 1 out of 5 will make it to year 5.
Yeah,
That's
so
tough.
Farming is not necessarily any different.
It's just like farming is because it's physical and it's grinding days. And so, but like there's a lot of trades that are like that. So anyway, I'm not downplaying that it's not so hard, but it's just, I don't see any red flags, you know, well-trained, commitment to improving processes, business acumen, understanding the business part of it, and the know-how of how to do things. Like being well trained in how to manipulate all the different veggies, how to grow them, how to deal with insect, disease, pest, how to deal with a crew, all of these things, you can acquire that if you have the right mindset.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, just like, I like these discussions, Chris.
Me too.
Anytime.
Let's do more of them.
All right, good. I hope everyone's well.